Welcome to the third FCM Postgraduate Reignite and Asia Pacific Artistic Research Network APARN Symposium 2024. I am Susie Sulaiman and I will be your MC for today. Okay. Maybe I'll give a few minutes to our guests to please gently find your respective seats. Thank you. Thank you for joining us. All right, moving on. To begin, may I please kindly request all distinguished guests to rise for the song of the national anthem, Negara Ku, followed by the MMU Permata Dunia song. Thank you. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, may I kindly ask you to take your seat? Okay, so the next agenda we will have a Dua recitation by Mr. Munir to bless this event.
الفاتحة. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. Ya Allah, Ya Rahman, Ya Rahim. Praise be to Allah, the Lord of the world. Peace and blessing upon our Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and his companion and for those who follow his example till the judgment day. Allahumma ya Allah, on this blessed morning, in conjunction with the opening ceremony of 3rd FCM Reignite, we are grateful toward you in favor of all the infinite blessing to us, your humble servant, to live a safe and prosperous life. Ya Allah, kindly give us strength and courage to face the struggle to find and gain knowledge. Kindly bestow blessing and physical, spiritual health, fitness and peace of mind, strength of spirit. We seek your blessing for the flawless progress of this event from the beginning till the end. ربنا عليك توكلنا وإلي أنبنا وإليك المصير. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. صلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم والحمد لله رب العالمين.
Thank you, Mr. Munir, for that lovely Dua recitation. All right, so moving on. Ladies and gentlemen, the 3rd FCM Postgraduate Reignite and Asia Pacific Artistic Research Network APARN Symposium 2024, hosted by Multimedia University, is a significant gathering of leading academics, researchers, practitioners, and postgraduate candidates in creative multimedia. This event serves as a platform for exchanging innovative ideas and research, fostering collaborations, and exploring the intersection of creativity and academia. Featuring panel discussions, open lab, and interactive sessions, the event highlights the transformative power of creative practice in higher education and the importance of interdisciplinary research in shaping the future of creative industries. It is now my honor to invite Ms. Nadia Mahmoud, Dean of Faculty of Creative Multimedia, to deliver her opening remarks. Please join me in welcoming her to the stage.
Let me fix this mic first. Well, I will hold it so it won't fall. Okay, it's okay. I'll hold it. Right. Yang berbahagia Professor Dr. Mazliha Muhammad Suud, President and Chief Executive Officer of MMU, Professor Gunala Nadaraja, Dean Emeritus, University of Michigan, Dr. Danny Butt, Senior Lecturer in Interdisciplinary Practice, Coordinator of Research, VCA Design and Production Chair, Human Ethics Committee, University of Melbourne, Ms. Sam Jury, Research Group Leader of the ArtSci Lab, School of Creative Arts, University of Hertfordshire, Mr. Rob Goodman, Reader in Music, School of Creative Arts, University of Hertfordshire, Mr. Shafiq Jibin, Dean of the Faculty of Cinematic Arts. Good morning, distinguished guests, esteemed colleagues, and dedicated students. Today marks the start of an exciting series of research events, the 3rd FCM Postgraduate Reignite Open Colloquium and the Asia Pacific Artistic Research Network APARN Symposium 2024. The faculty, along with the Faculty of Cinematic Arts, is proud to be the host of this year's APARN Symposium, bringing the theme of Art as Research, Methods for Synthetic Reasoning. It seeks to recognize the importance of the creative process that transcends conventional research boundaries, blending imagination with academic rigor to forge new paths of understanding. For us, the APARN Symposium is a platform for the artistic academic voice. Thank you. It is for our community to extend a hand to our friends in traditional research, inviting them to see our methods and explore opportunities for collaboration beneficial to both parties. More importantly, we also hope that this symposium is a booster shot to our practitioners who have been long conditioned into accepting conventional research, that they are afraid of alternative paths to validate their practice. Reignite is a third edition in the faculty's postgraduate colloquium series. The event acts as a space for postgraduate students to share their research, encouraging them to engage with individuals within and outside their own interests, creating an open discourse which aims to expand the breadth and the depth of their knowledge. We hope the vibrant discussions will help our students to not only elevate their research, but to also explore possibilities in multidisciplinary collaboration. I'm keeping my speech very, very short. Thank you for joining us in this vibrant event and exchange of ideas, and we hope for this series, that this series can enrich, expand the landscape of research into bigger and deeper territories. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you, Ms. Nadia, for that wonderful speech. Okay. Okay, thank you guys. All right, I'll start again. So thank you, Ms. Nadia Mahmood, for that wonderful speech. We hope that everyone is looking forward to an inspiring and enriching experience at the third FCM Postgraduate Reignite and Asia Pacific Artistic Research Network APARN Symposium 2024, filled with engaging discussions, presentations, and valuable networking opportunities. Okay, so let's move on to the highlight of the event. We are privileged to invite Yang Berbahagia, Professor Dato Dr. Mazliha Muhammad Suud, President and Chief Executive Officer of MMU, to deliver his speech and to officially launch our event today. Let us extend a warm round of applause.
It's okay. I manage this. Oh, no, it's okay. I'll manage this. No problem. I'm a hands-on guy, you know. I can manage all these things. Thank you very much. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Salam sejahtera. Very good morning to everyone. Ms. Nadia Mahmood, the Dean of Faculty of Creative Multimedia, and Mr. Shafiq Jibin, Dean of the Faculty of Cinematic Arts, all the distinguished professors, speakers from all the esteemed universities, thank you for being here. My friend, Associate Professor, now Professor, Associate Professor Dr. Lim Kok Yong, our former Dean of FCM, he's here. Our friend from Vietnam now, yeah. Deputy Deans, esteemed faculty members, artists, participants, students from all over the world. Mr. Tariq. Huh? Mr. Tariq, right? I know my student, and the distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I would like to welcome everybody to this third FCM Postgraduate Reignite and Asia Pacific Artistic Research Network Symposium 2024 today. It is a great pleasure to host such a distinguished gathering of creative minds here in MMU. I'm looking forward to the inspiring conversation and collaborations that will unfold from our event today until the 14th of June 2024. I would like to extend my utmost congratulations to the organizing committee for their commitment and tireless effort in bringing this event to life. Their dedication demonstrates the profound impact of creativity and its transformative power. A heartfelt welcome and gratitude to our distinguished guests and artists from around the world. Your presence adds significance to this momentous occasion. Thank you for gracing us with your time and support. And indeed, it is an honor for us to have everyone here with us today. Thank you very much. Few years ago, we always discussed with Dr. Kok Yong on the orientation of research for FCM. Compared to the other faculties here in MMU, we have the Faculty of Engineering, Faculty of Computing and Informatics, Faculty of Science and Technology, Faculty of Engineering and Technology, and these are all faculties that produce a lot of papers. But of course, it is not easy for Faculty of Creative Multimedia, Faculty of Cinematic Arts to produce papers, because we actually measure the papers that are published in WOS or Scopus to be considered as the papers that is recognized by the university for promotion and so on. I'm very happy that today we have this, although we actually now categorize FCM, FCA and FAC as a faculty that we don't expect to have a lot of publication, but we expect to have a lot of hands-on exhibitions and all those other things that can be considered as equivalent to all those Scopus papers. But of course, the level of difficulties must be the same. This was the discussion that we had a few years ago, right, Dr. Lim, yeah? Until Dr. Lim decided to leave us and join other university. Today, I'm very happy that we have this symposium and colloquium that will initiate some ideas and maybe initiatives to generate some papers or some sort of research presentation where as our university is always value the power of creative research. We understand that the arts are not just about expression, but also about exploration and discovery. Today, as we explore into this concept of synthetic reasoning, we embrace an approach that combines intuition and logics, creativity to drive groundbreaking research and innovation. And I think one of the area that FCM should look into is the partnership with all those FCI, all those computing and informatics faculties, that the combination of the research of your area with their area, I'm sure will generate something that will will become something that will propel FCM into this research arena. Synthetic reasoning involves combining different types of knowledge to create new understanding. It blends the familiar with the new, the traditional with the modern, produce something greater than its parts. This approach is fundamental to how we conduct research in MMU. I'm particularly proud of our Faculty of Creative Multimedia, the host faculty for this symposium, and they have been at the forefront of integrating technology and creativity, nurturing an environment where innovative ideas can flourish. Their dedication and passion are exemplary, and their contribution to creative research can be. I would like to congratulate their contribution to this creative research. Well done, the FCM and FCA. And hopefully, with your help, all the professors, experts, artists from around the world, one day MMU could be an example of creativity and innovation research, not only in Malaysia, but throughout the Asia Pacific, this region and beyond. We believe that by inquiring into the depths of our discipline, inspiring one another with our findings, and innovating with purpose, we can achieve remarkable things together. Before I end this speech, I would like to express my sincere gratitude to every one of you who are present here today. And I hope that all the speakers, the professors, the experts can help us throughout our journey. Maybe we can have some special attachment with MMU to continuously help MMU, especially the Faculty of Creative Multimedia and Faculty of Thematic Arts, to progress. Your participation signifies your belief in the power of creativity, innovation, and the transformative potential of the arts and the creative industry. Together, let us celebrate the accomplishment of our community and unlock the boundless possibilities that lies ahead. Let's cherish every moment together as we embark into this inspiring journey of knowledge and fellowship. I'm so sorry because I have another event after this. I need to leave early, otherwise I can stay and listen to all of you. But I hope that I wish you good luck. And with that note, I will hereby launch the third FCM Postgraduate Reignite and Asia Pacific Artistic Research Network Symposium 2024. Thank you very much.
So thank you, Prof. Dato', for that wonderful speech. Just to kind of shake things up, we will be having a lucky draw, as I was informed. And our dear Prof. Dato' will be the one who will be giving off the gifts. So, okay, so let's go. let's do this. Lucky draw. Winner, Yung Hui Lee. Come on down. Yung Hui Lee. Okay, Mr. Raj, let's spin the wheel. Muhammad Daniel, it's your lucky day. What, Daniel? Thank you. I think we have 8 more, 5 more. All right. Start again. Kaviri Nathan. Please excuse me. This way. So we have 2 more. Sorry. All right, 2 more spins. Kavinash. Mr. Kavinash, your lucky day. Okay, one last one. Mr. Papa Kahranan. Very close. Very close. So we have a winner from Thailand. Thank you. So thank you, Professor Dato, for handing out the gifts. And may I please ask the guest audience to please rise as our president. Oh, sorry. Sorry, Prof. Sorry. Because we had the lucky draw in. Oh. All right. Okay. So my apologies. We are also delighted to invite the Dean, Ms. Nadia Mahmood, to accompany our president to kindly present a memento for our special guest. And Mr. Shafiq Jibin from Faculty of Cinematic Arts. Sorry. So, okay, all right. Just a quick memento. I would like to kindly invite Professor Gunala Nandaraja, Dean Emeritus, University of Michigan, USA. Next, I would like to kindly invite Dr. Danny Butt from Senior Lecturer of Interdisciplinary Practice, Coordinator of Research, VCA Design and Production Chair, Human Ethics Committee, University of Melbourne, Australia. Next, I would like to invite Ms. Samantha Jury Research Group Leader for the Art Science Lab, School of Creative Arts, University of Hertfordshire, UK. Next, I would like to invite Mr. Rob Godman, Reader of Music, School of Creative Arts, University of Hertfordshire, UK. May I also call upon Ms. Nadia Mahmood to present a memento to Yang Berbahagia Professor Datuk Dr. Masliha Muhammad Suud, President and Chief Executive Officer of MMU. Okay. All right. To document this momentous occasion, we will now have a photo session. May I invite our esteemed president, our distinguished guest, and the organizing committee to please come on stage. Thank you. Yes.
Yuraj, Mr. Yuraj, Saubin, don't hide, Saubin. Yuraj, Mr. Yuraj. Thank you very much, Yang Berbahagia Prof. Datuk Dr. Masliha Muhammad Suud, for gracing us with your presence and launching the third FCM Postgraduate Reignite in APARN 2024, despite your busy schedule and for your continuous support towards our faculty. Ladies and gentlemen, please rise as the President departs to attend another event. So let's show our appreciation with you very much. Just give us a few moments as we rearrange furniture on stage. Okay. We are supposed to have another lucky draw? We are supposed to have another lucky draw? That though? Okay. Where is the person who's supposed to cue me?
also the highlight of the event.
Test.
All right, my turn. Thank you. All right, so now we will proceed to our creative forum titled Creative Practices as Research in Institute of Higher Learning, IHL, moderated by Mr. Yap Saobin. Our distinguished panelists for the forum are Professor Gunalan Nadaraja, Dr. Danny Butt, and Ms. Samantha Jury. Please welcome our moderator and panelists. My apologies, and of course, not forgetting Mr. Rob Godman onto the stage. So, please come on stage, yes.
Okay. Right. Good morning. It's rather rare that we start with a lucky draw. I felt like we are the end of it. Yeah. Right. Are you gonna? Come. Anyway. Yeah. Let her sit there. That's good. This is going to sound very serious. It's not going to sound very serious, right? Yeah? It's not going to sound very serious, right? Sorry? It's going to be very serious. Yes. Okay, all right. We have it serious. All right, sure. Okay, good morning, everyone. So I will just go straight to cut to the deal. Welcome to the APARN first panel discussion, Creative Practice as Research in Institute of Higher Learning. This panel sort of begins with positing the idea that artistic research as an epistemic inquiry, combining high-level artistic practice with reflection, addressing topics relevant to artistic discipline and beyond. The idea is to elevate artistic research to be recognized as equal to scientific research in tertiary institution, which is crucial for fostering creativity, innovation, and interdisciplinary collaboration. So together with me, glad to have Professor Gunalan Nadarajan, Dr. Danny Butt, okay, Samantha Jury, and Rob Goodman from the UK. Oh, that's nice. Thank you. All right, if I may, just go through the profile for all our distinguished speakers. Guna is the Dean Emeritus and Professor at the Penny W. Stamps School of Art and Design at the University of Michigan. He's an art theorist and curator specializing in the intersection of art, science, and technology. He has extensive publication and curation of international exhibition and biennale, including ICR, Arts Electronica, so on and so forth, and has been involved in various organizations promoting media arts and artistic research. Danny is a senior lecturer in interdisciplinary practice at the Victorian College of the Arts at University of Melbourne, where he is also coordinator of research for design and production, has published extensively, especially on artistic research, and works with the Auckland-based art collective Local Time and is chair of the board of experimental sound arts organization Liquid Architecture. Samantha is the director for Doctorate of Fine Art and research group leader for the Art Science Labs at the School of Creative Arts, Hertfordshire University. Sam is also an interdisciplinary artist who explores the psychological impact of film-based imagery and how its ubiquity shapes our understanding of society and self, right? And works across the media of photography, video, sound, and installation, which is navigating the gaps and fissures between moving and still imagery. So a significant aspect of Sam's practice involves collaboration with partners from other disciplines. Recent projects include working together with choreographers, writers, and psychologists in music at the University of Hertfordshire, as well as a concert hall practice and gallery work. Has worked on large-scale public art projects, projecting sound and light onto many of the world's most iconic buildings throughout Europe and Australia. And Rob is also a founder member of the UH Art Science Lab, and much of his artistic explore arts and science crossover. So he would present together with Samantha later, Pulse, which is the sound of surgery, practice-led research, and the research impact in that sense. So some of the questions we provided to the panels is actually into these three scopes, okay, for discussion. Defining artistic research or artistic practice as research. How can we, or why is it important to articulate a clear definition of artistic research that highlights the unique characteristic and align with the common criteria of research and development? Okay, what are the different aspects of artistic research that do not fit the convention of research practice as defined by the conventional higher learning institution? How do we change that? Okay, why is it important to have the artistic practice to be recognized by this institution? All right, and the second area is look at the impact and significance of this kind of artistic practice as research. Okay, what are the impact? What can they bring to us? How does it address broader cultural, social, and economic issues? And how can we measure them in that sense? And lastly, how about thinking about transdisciplinary approaches? Okay, what benefits arise from combining artistic methods with those from other disciplines or research tradition? How can people from various knowledge domains work together towards acknowledging the diversity in research output? Okay, how do we measure this output, right, when it's so diverse and so transdisciplinary in nature? So how do we measure them, and how do we adhere that to whatever conventional standard measuring methods? So these three areas of defining artistic practice as research, the impact and significance, and transdisciplinary approaches was something that we have in mind when we work together on this panel, and hopefully we can invite our guests to deliberate on that. So it'll be about 15 minutes presentation from each of the panels, and then first I will go with Guna. Yes, right? Do you have a presentation? Or? Yep, I do. Right, good, cool. Then we will come with Danny, then Samantha with Rob. Right.
Can I use this?
Yes.
My presentation is...
Is it that? There you go.
All right. Thank you very much, Selvin. And I would like to thank Nadia and Rupesh for bringing us together here. It's always nice. I've been here multiple times, and I'm always excited to see the excitement in everyone's faces about the arts and about culture, and now the topic is about artistic research, and I hope that we collectively can help formulate some ideas that will be helpful to you as an institution. I wanted to talk about the value of artistic research. I'll start with the first slide. And before I do that, I wanted to preface my remarks by saying a bit about what I have been doing institutionally in my own work. just to provide some context for why this is important. Um, I was trained in the humanities and the social sciences, but then found my way into the arts. And I've always been fascinated by the sciences. Science and technology has always been fascinating for me. So everywhere I went in the arts, I found ways to connect these disciplines. But I found that very often in universities, institutes of higher learning, the arts and what we do in the arts is seen as marginal to the core mission, especially the core research mission of universities. And it was frustrating for me, and it is still frustrating for me that, like many years later, we are still having these conversations because the value of what arts bring, both by way of the research methods that we pursue, as well as what we do that enhances people's lives, nourishes people's souls. These things are sometimes difficult to measure, but nevertheless, they are impacts that we have in society, in culture. And then why is it that universities don't seem to understand what we do as artists, what we do as designers, what we do as animators? And I think part of the problem is the history of institutions. University structures have been formed with this idea of silos, and this system is relatively new. It's a 250-year-old system, right, that we inherited, understandably, from our colonizers. And we have tried to find ways to manage the divisions between disciplines rather than actually saying, hey, look, these disciplines are artificial distinctions. What is at the core of what we do, right, as scholars, as artists, as scientists, is that we are in the pursuit of knowledge. We are in the pursuit of knowledge, we're in the pursuit of things that would actually make our lives better, make other people's lives better. But we have not been able to do that successfully as artists within university structures, primarily because we have always ended up being treated as second-class citizens within a university system. We are always imposters. And I say this with an honesty that comes from having been in university systems for 30-something years. And it is still very difficult to find our way and our place in university structures. And it has to change. It has changed in many countries, and it has to change also in many parts of Asia where we still do not have institutions that are clearly recognizing the value of artistic research. So, the reasons why we are told that what we do is not very important is because, well, artistic research, it's about, what you feel and, how you feel. My feelings are being poured into my painting. How is it valuable for society? How is it curing cancer? If it's not curing cancer, then it must not be. Is it helping us build the next new bridge? So we have come to think about research in highly instrumental ways, and universities are to blame for that. Universities tend to still emphasize applied research, what they call applied research, where your idea is only important if it can be applied to something that is tangible and real, right? Like building a bridge, curing cancer. But you might not cure cancer, but you bring a twinkle in the eye of another person when they see your work. Now, is that useful? Is that valuable? Can it be measured? Maybe it can't be measured, but it is important nevertheless. And part of our challenge, I think, is to talk about how what we do, both in terms of the methods we pursue and the kinds of things we discover and learn and project and create are all equally valuable. It is unfortunate we still have to justify why we do what we do, and what we do is valuable, but it is critical for us to continue to do that, because otherwise we will continue to be marginalized in university structures. So proudly make your art and proudly defend the value of that. So one reason, if we go back to my first slide, it was the division between artistic research and scientific research. Artistic research is seen as secondary, as subjective, as not as methodologically clear as scientific research. And these distinctions between artistic research and scientific research have been used by institutions to say, hey, art research, we don't know what it is, it doesn't seem to have any real value, let's keep it aside, let's not acknowledge it as important as it is. Are you publishing papers? Right? And so the question then is, how can we show that first, we are similar? Artistic research and scientific research is similar. They are not entirely different from each other. And then two, I want to share with you some ideas about how it is different and how the difference that we bring to academia, to institutes of higher learning, is important. So I'll start with how we are similar. We are, whether you're in the sciences or the arts, in your research, you are pursuing a notion of truth. However you define it, I want to understand how this works. Now, when you discover that, you are discovering something that is out there in a way that cannot be denied. And that pursuit of truth, even though it's defined differently in the arts and the sciences, that is common to both of us. In research, we are doing that. It's problem-driven. We start with a problem. Both artists and scientists, when they think about their research, they are pursuing it with a problem that drives how they do it. Observation and representation. We are both involved, whether you talk about a scientist, they are observing an experimental situation, and then they are representing it in some way, either in publication, in a diagram, in a graph, so we are doing both of us are doing that as artists and scientists. We are experimental, and I want to emphasize that one of the first formulations of the scientific method was written by Francis Bacon. And Bacon talks very interestingly about this. He says that in science, we need to twist the lion's tail, by what he calls the vexations of art. What are the vexations of art? You disturb nature, you disturb reality, you press against it, you change it, you transform it, and you learn something about it. That's what artists do. He did not use the word art incidentally. He actually meant that artistic work already is doing the work of science. And experiment is the ultimate expression of both what the spirit of science is and what the spirit of art is. Both of us, what we do, arts and science, we are iterative in our process. We actually start with some ideas, we do something, and then we learn something from doing, and then we go back to the original drawing board, and then we rework it, and then we continue doing it. That iterative process that incorporates failure. Scientists fail, artists fail, but it's a very important part of how we iterate and how we pursue our process. We both are interested in peer review, meaning that scientists are interested in sharing their ideas once they have it with a group like this. Artists are interested in doing a work and then presenting it in a space that will be peer reviewed by people who come to the exhibition, by people who sit down and watch a performance, look at a film, right? And lastly, both of us are engaging the public, because we know that our research is not just simply for our own sake. It is for, at the end of the day, for the good of the public. And therefore, we need to engage the public. I would argue that artists do more of public engagement than scientists do in their research, But nevertheless, we both do that. Next one, please. Next slide, if someone can help me with the next slide. Okay, that's it. Difference. We pursue our work very differently. We have different methodologies. And that doesn't mean that one method is better or worse. We have different methods, and it's fine. We have different claims to objectivity. Most scientists, most scientific research starts with the assumption that, what they are doing is objective. They try and do everything they can to make it as objective as possible. Artists don't care as much about those things, not because they don't think about those things as important. They think that, and they start with the assumption that subjectivity is a very important part of knowing the world. Hypothesis versus exploratory inquiry. Scientific research starts with hypothesis, and artistic research very often does not start with the hypothesis, but starts with a process of exploration. Repeatability versus unique outcomes. In science, when you have an experiment, the ideal is that you would be able to repeat it exactly under the same conditions and get the same results. Art doesn't work like that. We have unique outcomes every time. Even if it's the same performance, when it's performed again, it is a different thing. Predictability versus uncertainty. I think that science works on the idea of predictable outcomes. And again, I'm speaking in broad terms. Not all scientists, not all scientific research is like that, but broadly speaking, predictability is an important ideal. Uncertainty is an important ideal in the arts. I don't know where I'm going. It's not a bad thing. Artists are not too concerned about the fact that I don't know where I'm going. It's frustrating, it's difficult, but it's not what they are troubled by. Instrumental value. Art doesn't pretend to have instrumental value, but science always starts with this idea that there is instrumental value, even if not immediate, but ultimately. Cultural valuation, and this is the part that gets us all the time, because culturally, we have developed as a society across the board in many countries, the idea of art being valuable as a way of knowing the world is still very, very low. People don't think about the value of art as a way of knowing the world in the same way that they value science. And then the pathos of public engagement. I think what art brings to public engagement is a certain amount of emotional investment, and therefore it elicits that same kind of emotional investment on the part of people. And that's a very highly successful way, I think, of sharing knowledge. And science, very often, scientific papers, when you see them or you read them, they don't end up having the same kind of emotional connection. And that still matters. So what I wanted to emphasize with the similarity is to say that we're not that different after all, and therefore we should not be treated differently, right? Two, we are very different in what we do, but that difference is very important for the diversity of perspectives that any university should have. An institute of higher learning that only has one set of perspectives and denies everything else is not going to be successful. So I want to stop there. I think I've already went past. So thank you very much, and we'll discuss more.
Thank you very much, Guna, for doing a crash course and summary of archaeology of knowledge. Next, can we have Danny to just share with us some of your thoughts and perhaps in response to Guna as well, if possible.
Great. I also have a presentation. Can I use this?
Or you can use this technology.
Try No? Okay. Well, I'll just ask for it to come through. So you'll have to please excuse me for asking for you to step through these slides. I thought I was going to be working the machinery. I'm also a hands-on guy like your president. Thanks especially Rupesh Sitharan, your team, for the invitation to come here to MMU. And very exciting to be back. I think I first came to Cyberjaya in 2002 when I was working on internet governance for United Nations Development Program, and it was really just being constructed, and now I'm back and here it is. And I think that's important in terms of just having a future-oriented approach to all of these questions. And just to acknowledge, Dean Nadia, your remarks at the beginning about the importance of doing things in a different way and in a new way towards what that future is going to be, and that's a very important part of what we're talking about with artistic research. Thanks, Gunnar, for your leadership. Also, my colleague, Dr. Kaniwan Adisaputro from ISI, Jogjakarta. I can use the clicker, you think, here or there? Okay. Maybe. Sorry. Kaniwan, thank you for your collaboration around the institution of the network. Professor Ponrat Damrung from Chulalongkorn, another esteemed collaborator there from the beginning. And I think this is the first time we've had the APARN network meeting outside of Indonesia, and I think that's a very important step into where things go. What I thought I would just talk about is just what we do at the University of Melbourne in Victorian College of the Arts, because it's now been almost a quarter century of PhDs with creative works. And so it's not a new thing anymore, right? It's like people have been born, grown up, become adults. Maybe some of you in the room are not yet 25. So it's this is getting old, this artistic research PhD thing. So I think we can maybe sort of take stock of it as something which I've been playing experimental music in New Zealand. I didn't know that I was going to work in a university or of course be involved in artistic research, but so there's perhaps still some way for it to go. So perhaps we could just step through everything on this timeline here and bring that up, because I won't do it. I won't do it step by step. But just to say, I think it's important to remember that the PhD first came to the United Kingdom in after the First World War, long after it had been in North America. And that was mostly because the government told them they had to have a PhD. None of the, it was only the new universities in England who wanted a PhD in the 19th century, because a lot of people from the US, about 8,000 people from the east coast of the US, traveled to Germany to do their PhD. So this is why it started in the US in the 19th century before kind of coming to England. And mostly it was Oxford and Cambridge who said, we don't want anything to do with this newfangled German PhD thinking. We've got our totally fine master's degree, so please, please just leave us to it. And we particularly don't want any of these new universities, these upstarts coming along and actually, having something that might be seen to be at a doctorate level when they're clearly not as good as us. Now, after the First World War, obviously, Anglophone students from the US and UK could not travel to Germany, and so the government basically said, Oxford and Cambridge, we want you to have a PhD so these students have somewhere to go. And then, of course, they're like, okay, well, if you give us a bunch of money, we'll have a PhD. And the reason that this is important is if we think in Australia, it was 1924 that the University of Melbourne first tried to bring in a PhD, but it was the other universities who were kind of against the University of Melbourne bringing in that PhD, and so they agitated against it, and it was declined until 1948, that eventually, after the Second World War, everyone accepted that, okay, we can have a PhD. So it's like this pathway into the PhD took a little while. Okay, in most most UK descended systems, New Zealand, Australia, there was an amalgamation of higher education and the end of a technical university or technical institute system and universities, and them coming together around this period. And this is the time we start thinking about artistic research. And that brought a growth in professional doctorates in the 1980s and 1990s. So the first doctorals of the 1980s, La Trobe University, again, not the kind of more established University of Melbourne, University of Sydney, prestigious universities. The new universities are the ones who are getting on board with this new way of thinking about artistic research and what it opens up. But what happens at this time with this growth in university education is that people go, how do we measure, how good this research is that we're giving money to as a government? Well, of course, the thing we can do is count it. So if we count the number of publications that you have, then obviously the more publications you have, the more work you're doing and the more value we're getting for our money. But the problem became that in 1996, there were these 22 different types of publications that would get counted, including art and design works. But then the government said, we'll only have 4. We'll just have peer-reviewed journal articles, book chapters, books, and we're not going to be counting anyone's exhibitions or creative works anymore. So our art school was the last independent school to have a degree accreditation by a university, and in 2000 we had a PhD, and in 2007 we were amalgamated with the University of Melbourne. So very late in the day for us to become a university. We'd been independent for a long time. In the sort of 2006, 2011, we start getting what our British colleagues know as the research assessment exercise. Instead of counting the number of publications, why don't we have experts peer review what research are doing and what researchers are doing and give them a score based on that. Finally, this is now being abandoned because it's very, very, very time intensive to convene panels of appropriately qualified peer reviewers to evaluate your portfolios and determine how good your artistic research is. So the government is now has paused that process and is now thinking about what it will do next. Probably it will be some version of matching external funding that you get as an organization. So I think this timeline is important because it talks about this idea of artistic research being equivalent to a scientific journal article, or the idea of counting journal articles in order to receive government support was a particular period in time, and that time is passing. Right? We're into a new era, and it's time for new types of thinking, I would say. So our PhD has a small coursework requirement. We have a slight, we take the written PhD as being 80 to 100,000 words, and then a certain percentage of that can be constructed through the creative work. So typically, someone doing an exhibition will also write a 40 to 50,000 word written component or dissertation, and the creative work and the written component are together seen as being the thesis. So that's important. The writing, can take a number of forms. We can talk about that later. There's 2 supervisors. It takes 3 to 4 years. And there's a confirmation process after a year, so you're admitted on probationary candidature, and then your committee decides after 1 year whether you can continue. Within 6 months of submitting, you present your work to an audience of your peers. There are 3 independent examiners. One travels from interstate. If there's an exhibition or creative work component. So that usually happens about 6 months before the written component is submitted. Or if it's not a live component like an exhibition or a performance, there's documentation of the creative work. Say you've made a software program or a film or something like that. That can be submitted alongside the dissertation at the very end. Okay. And in that case, there will be 2 examiners, 1 international, and that's at the end. The reason we have 3 examiners if there's a live work component is because that happens earlier. We need 2 examiners, independent examiners, to get a result. So if if we only had 2 examiners who saw your performance, for example, and then one of them, gets injured or can't complete the examination, by the time the dissertation comes around, we would only have 1 examiner. So we have 3 to make sure that we always have at least 2 independent examiners. We have about 12 to 16 enter the VCA each year, about the same in the music school, in the same faculty. We've had over 200 graduates from the VCA, probably more. That's an underestimate, actually. So we've been doing this for a long time. The processes are very well worked out about how you examine and award these qualifications. So I'll just give you some questions which I think no longer need to be answered about artistic research PhDs. Do we need to better distinguish between PhDs and professional doctorates? I think the professional doctorate period has passed. Even in other disciplines like nursing or education that had professional doctorates, the trend is more towards PhDs. All the researchers who've studied the difference between professional doctorates and PhDs have said that PhDs are more different between each other than they are from any particular professional doctorate. So, like, you don't actually know what's in a PhD just because it has those 3 letters. A PhD in chemistry is not at all like a PhD in anthropology. PhD in theoretical physics, maybe 20,000 words. You can't tell what one is. You have to actually know the discipline for it. Do we need more specific examination guidelines around PhDs involving creative works? No, we don't, because precisely the university doesn't say if you're doing your PhD in chemistry, here is how you examine the PhD, or if you're doing your PhD in economics or engineering, this is how you examine the PhD. What they say is that you need appropriately qualified examiners who are experts in that field to give a holistic judgment of the contribution to knowledge, and it's exactly the same in artistic research. So we don't need anything special about this. Is the artistic research PhD rigorous enough? There's been a lot of study now of the PhD process that talks about the fact that often there's more rigor involved in examining an artistic research PhD than there is in, say, some parts of the social sciences where methodology is sort of fairly clear and assumed. You have to do a lot of work to actually to undertake an examination, and they're quite rigorous, mostly. Can art, design, or media works make a contribution to knowledge? Yes, we know that. So these are all questions that in the late 1990s, early 2000s, people were asking about artistic research PhDs to see whether art schools should be allowed to have them. I think these questions are all answered. We've been doing it for a long time. We don't need to have these conversations anymore. We do need to, I think, still have some other conversations, which are still to be answered. How can institutions develop their expertise in supervising artistic research? Most of us just kind of learn along the way. Sometimes we learn it's a bit like parenting. You learn from your own supervisors. They might not have been particularly skilled at it themselves, but that's how you get to know it, and you try and do something different, or you unconsciously do the same thing without thinking about it. How can we develop this is important. What education and methods and methodology is appropriate for artistic research? Michael Craig Martin says that there are no basic things for artists because what's basic for one artist is different for another artist. So you can't just say that this is the kind of methodology you should be using, but but we know that you have to construct methodology in an artistic research PhD. And what you need to know in order to do that, I think, is still a very live question. I do a lot of teaching of artistic research methods. The third one, how can institutions support the physical and technological facilities required for artistic research? In Australia, if you're a scientist, you go and apply for research grants to have your lab, and that's where all the PhD students come and do the work. That's not what happens in artistic research PhDs. It's not like you don't get grants and create a workplace in the same way. So institutions have to support this a lot, maybe the same way they support a library for humanities research, right? But these are difficult questions that our deans have to answer. How do the ethical sensibilities of artistic research meet institutional review committees who have no experience of creative works? Because I chair a research ethics committee, this is a problem that comes up a lot. Artists are often extremely ethical in the way they engage audiences and participants, but if it doesn't follow a linear process, people who are more experienced in medical research or scientific research don't really, know how to evaluate that. When and how does a viva voce or oral examination sit in relation to the creative work and written component if those two components are not assessed at the same time? We're only just beginning an oral examination process for the PhD. For a long time, Australian institutions didn't necessarily have it because we felt that all of the people who were experts were back in Europe and it was expensive to get them out. But now, of course, we have Zoom and etc. And this is seen as being an important part of how things are examined, but it's still getting worked out. And finally, how can the academic sector develop career pathways out of doctoral study for artistic researchers? We're certainly in Australia, like most of the Anglophone world, seeing a decline in real terms of investment in higher education, and that makes it challenging for people who come out with a PhD to find their next steps into having a research career, having an academic career, or etc. So that's it for me. If you're interested in these kinds of matters, there's a QR code here. You can get a PDF of my book on that, which talks about that history in more international sense. But I thought, I just thought that maybe talking a little bit about how we do it at the University of Melbourne might be useful to you, as I know from Rupesh that you're on a journey here to advocate for this type of research. So thank you.
Thank you, Danny. It's an epic journey which has been on and on as long as the Odysseus has gone in. And thank you very much, Danny, for providing a sort of social historical recount of the professionalization of PhD research in terms of artistic practice, and giving us a rundown of the political economy of that aspect. So next I would like to invite Samantha. Right, Samantha, yeah.
You can call me Sam.
Sam, all right, Sam, and then Rob as well.
I'm sort of going to have two things on the go because I've got my notes here. What could go wrong? Okay. Hello, everyone. Hello. I feel like I should burst into song now. I've got the microphone. I just want to thank Dean Nadia and Rupesh for inviting us, and also for James Lai for looking after us while we're here. First time to Malaysia. Yeah, it's great to be here. And thank you to Salbin for the questions, because this made the presentation kind of easy for me, actually. So thank you, that was such a gift. My name is Sam Jury. I am an artist originally. I trained as a painter, and I went into academia as a 0.5 lecturer with the belief, which I still hold, is that you can't teach unless you're doing it, right? So I still do it. I've worked my way up the sort of academic ranks to some extent. I now lead the ArtSci Research Lab, which I'll talk a little bit more about through the presentation. And I also have significant responsibility for research, which in sort of layman's terms means that the work that I do as part of my studio practice contributes to the university's research assessment framework, which has been kindly mentioned by Danny, REF as we know it. So my outputs for the research assessment would be exhibitions, films, body of film works, how do we articulate a clear definition of artistic research that highlights the unique characteristics and aligns with the common criteria of research development. Could you swap the slides? Sorry, I realise we're not connected, so thank you. I'll try to be more observant. This is actually from our research assessment in the UK, and I think it's a really nice definition that anyone could use. So I think it's really applicable for art practice. A process of investigation leading to new insights effectively shared. Okay, so this is something that you know we can all do as practitioners. This is a longer paragraph, and I've just highlighted the bit here that says generation of ideas, images, performances, and artifacts, including design. So I think in a way we already have a good articulation of this in the UK, for better or for worse. I mean, I actually quite like that we have the research assessment because it means that if the university put my work forward for its assessment and they get money from that, they have to prove that they have paid for my time doing it and that they support it. So this is really, like, I think, a very super positive thing that we have, and we are assessed by our peers, I think, as Danny has talked about already, so I don't need to go over that. In the REF, what we're assessed on are outputs, impact, and Rob is going to talk a bit more about impact, and environment. So what our research groups, our postgraduate students at the university, we have a gallery, we have a museum status. So it's all our environment as well that goes into sort of one parcel of assessment. And the criteria are significance, rigor, and originality. I was very impressed that I always forget one. Rob and I have both been put forward to a couple of REFs now. They're every 6 years. They feel like they're sooner, but they are every 6 years. So we have quite a lot of experience of articulating our work as research. And I'd just like to say that it hasn't changed the kind of work I do at all. I'm still tiny bit not true, actually, but it's probably improved the way I talk about my work, but I haven't changed my work to be research. So I think that's a really key thing to mention. We also have some postgraduate programs. It's interesting that Danny says that the doctorates are out. Well, we have doctorates, and we've got having a lot of interest actually in the professional doctorate. So we have a doctorate in design, doctorate in heritage, and I run the doctorate of fine art. What's really interesting about that is that there's no minimum word count for the thesis. So a big part of the what you would submit would be your practice of your body of work. Could you change my slide, please? So the next question was, why is it important to articulate research? I think, we're going to talk about a lot of these things. I think for me, this simply because the arts are a knowledge-forming discipline. So we make new knowledge. So that's why we're part of this knowledge at the university. We had a good track record, quite a strong track record of art and science collaborations within our small group in the School of Creative Arts. And we have built on that to create a lab. And what we want to do is lead with the arts. So, people have talked about this earlier, that quite often the arts are seen as kind of slightly second. It illustrates science, or it might be it might explain science to the public as if artists are like we're naturally born to engage with the general public with science. So that we want to debunk that myth and say we can lead with the arts. So we've been working internally with our science community. We work with engineering, psychology, astrophysics. We work outside the university. We've been working with what we're saying is that we want to lead with the arts. And we started actually by doing a little bit of speed dating with the scientists at the university and said, hey, does anyone want to work with us? And we had a really great response. Oh, engineering, of course, was our first date, was with engineering. Yes, so in terms of going back to the original question about why is it important to articulate artistic research, it's because we think also that we can add and learn from other disciplines and contribute to other disciplines, and that's what we try to do in the ArtSci lab. If you think about the fact that we are now faced with some very existential issues, global warming being the most obvious one, AI, these kind of like big issues that we have, we need, somebody mentioned this over dinner last night. I think it's, if you haven't read Karen Barad, then this is a really, she's very in the zeitgeist. She's a feminist thinker and physicist, but she talks about this idea of entanglement. And we live in an entangled world, and when we have these big problems, we need entangled solutions to them. So this is kind of what the arts, the arts is entangled, and we are meaning makers, arguably, and can be meaning makers of very complex issues. Could you press the button? Because I think, it's come up. So this consilience is something by the biologist E.O. Wilson, which I also think is a really nice way of talking about how art is activated within an art-science collaboration. I'm also just a little shout out to our colleague Ilana Jelinek, because she writes a lot about all of these things that we're going to talk about today, the value of art in society, but she also talks about interdisciplinary work where art is very active, and she also talks about art as how art is described as knowledge forming and a discipline in its own right. Could you press the next? Thank you. I think I've probably already mentioned that and covered that. We do in the UK, and I think maybe this will be some of the food for the discussion. Diversity in thinking is a really obvious one. How we interpret the world, and we need diversity. All sort of ecosystems need diversity to survive. So, we need the arts in there. I think if in the case of the West, we're kind of losing this idea of different ways of thinking. Everything's quite siloed. And we were talking yesterday with James and Clarissa about this idea of intuition and how we're in danger of losing intuition. Clarissa was talking about it in terms of physics. So I think this sort of idea of different ways of thinking is really important. I have a sort of small anecdote about when I work with the fine arts students at Hertfordshire, is that quite often when they start a body of work, they'll sit at their desk, and this is actually true. And I don't know why they all do this, or they don't all do this, but the ones that do it do the same diagram. They'll do a little cloud like that, and it will say in the middle, ideas. And they'll sit and look at this little cloud that says ideas for ages. And then I'll go and chat with them for a tutorial, and I say, so what are you doing? They said, I'm thinking. Like I'm doing research. And I said, just start some making. Just start something, and you will think through the making. And I think it's a really obvious thing to say, but not all artists, but most artists think through the making. So, we talked a bit about some of the similarities and differences of art and science and how they work. But we could also, I've got a few words that we would share also: experimentation, risk-taking, learning from failure, objectivity. I think these are some of the shared methods we have as well. I think I'm ready for the next slide. I would just say as well that, like, one of the main things that Alana talks about in her work is how in the arts we need to reassert ourselves as this discipline. Because I think we've lost our way a little bit with that. We are a knowledge-making discipline. We have an art history. We have our own methods. We have falsification. We have all the, we are a discipline. So I think that is something that can be quite simply done to reassert that. impact, like I said, Rob, Rob got the impact card, so he's going to cover that. But I just want to say a couple of things on it. Why is it important to have artistic practice to be recognised in a higher learning institution? I've answered this one actually. Sorry. It's me. I'm on the wrong slide. What impact does artistic research have beyond the arts, and how does it add to broader cultural and social economic issues? I mean, that's a really, really, really huge question. I would argue against the term artistic research, actually, because it suggests a little bit it's about the art of making, or, you know, the art of making process. But I think, you know, the term practice-led or arts practice-led research works much better for me. We engage in the world generally. When we have exhibitions, we engage in the world. And when we have an artwork, like this is an exhibition that Rob and I did in Depot, Istanbul. It's about a post-conflict situation in the Caucasus, but we then engaged with, for instance, the Kurdish community in Turkey. So there was all these dialogues. So the art was the centre of the hub of it, and then there are all these dialogues and activities that go around it. So, you know, that's one example. Representations of trauma and the sound, trauma and sound, and that was literally embodied in the installation. We worked with these sort of mechanisms of how trauma is both perceived visually and also felt within the body. So it's a small example of, you know, how research can be actually embodied, or the form can actually be embodied in the actual final output. In this case, it was a multi-channel installation. If I can have the next slide, please. What sort of changes are required for higher institutions to better accommodate non-traditional research outputs? I notice you have galleries and lots of spaces here for dissemination. We do too. We have UH Arts. They have an international program. They show some of the researchers, but we also show our community. We show artists from all over the world. So we are ourselves a hub, and I think that I can see that happens here too, and this is a good example. And we also have a collection and a museum status now for our gallery. I whisked over that one a little bit because Rob, I don't want to repeat a lot of what Rob says. I want to finish on a final one in relation to how can people from various knowledge domains work together towards acknowledging diversity in research output. This is a picture of Rob. You might not be able to tell because it's the back of his head. And this is Loic Caudron. He's our first date from engineering. And this collaboration came together, first of all, because there was a kind of simpatico between two people, right? They liked each other, and they were really... They enjoyed just talking to each other, and Loic was telling us about his work in microfluidics. So basically, Loic, I'm sorry if there's any engineers here, to my bad version of what this is, but Loic tends to look at how very small droplets move. And he was telling us about this, and his lab is on a tiny chip. And Rob asked him, well, what sound does the droplet make? Which is the kind of question that artists ask, right? And so this led to a whole body of work. This is the anechoic chamber at the University of Hertfordshire. There's a tiny little microchip in there with a tiny dot on it, and this is all this equipment to try to see, does it make a sound? I'll leave that question open, you know. And so we're really interested in this, and we're also really interested in the collaboration process. Like, how does it work? You know, when artists and scientists work together, or people from disciplines work different disciplines together, how does that actually work? We are working with an anthropologist called James Leach, who's one of the few people that's actually looked at how that actually works, you know, and that it's not just lip service. Objects, I think he's looking for a better name, something a bit sexier, but he's looking at the things that, like, so yeah, this is just sort of a bit of a snapshot of what we're doing. We're quite young as a group, so we're sort of, these are a lot of the questions actually that we're posing, and especially this last one I think is one that we're really posing for ourselves. And that is me. And I have one more slide that says, thank you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Sam. So Rob, you're gonna.
The duet can begin.
Embodiment of collaborating.
Yes, we can see how we collaborate.
Oh, see?
That's it, the end.
Thank you. That's it. Thank you very much.
That's the longest thesis I see.
I think it is.
Is it working?
Yeah. Good morning, everybody. Thanks to everybody for inviting us. As Sam mentioned, this is our first time in Malaysia, and I'm absolutely delighted to be here. One of the things that we wanted to do, as well as take you through some of how artistic work works in a university, is actually to show you an example of kind of an early stage piece of practice-led research in motion. So what I wanted to talk to you today about was a project that I'm currently doing in collaboration with a hospital in the centre of London, and this particular hospital is called Bart's Hospital. Bart's Hospital has got an enormous history. It goes back around about 900 years. And some of you may know that actually a lot hospitals also have a history of actually working with art. So in Bart's Hospital, there are incredible murals which are on parts of the old building. And the history behind the collaborative process between medical staff and artists is very, very, very well established. So this is not anything which is terribly new. So the project, as I say, I'm talking to you today about is in collaboration with a cardiologist, an anaesthetist to be accurate, by the name of Juan Paulo Martinelli. And that particular project looks very much as if it will go towards this thing here. Now, we've heard quite a lot of mentions so far of these letters REF, and the letters REF send shivers through the spine of particularly people in the UK. So the REF stands for the Research Excellence Framework, and the Research Excellence Framework is basically how we are told how good our research is. Discuss. So there's quite a few things to think about when it comes down to the REF, but as Sam alluded to, there are three main areas. So we can look at outputs, that's the actual work that we actually do. We can look at the environment, the actual space that we create, and that space doesn't just mean physical space, but it means almost the emotional space where people work. It means the actual community, particularly to the type of research that we are involved in. So Sam's already given us a few definitions from the REF. You'll be pleased to know that mine is slightly shorter. So as far as impact is concerned, so for the purposes of the REF, impact is defined as the effect on, the change or benefit to the economy, society, culture, public policy or services, health, the environment, or the quality of life beyond academia. We then need to think about how it gets assessed, because it's no good just sort of saying, well, my work has impact. How is it assessed? How is it measured? And we have to do all of those things. So we've heard various discussions about objectivity and subjectivity. When it comes down to impact, these things are absolutely measured by the REF, and we spend an awful long time doing it. One of the important things, as far as we are concerned, in the UK relating to REF, is that the overall percentage of the weighting for all these different areas, impact, is given much, much, much more attention now. So I could be quite crude about this, but I won't here. But the word impact basically means, does anybody care about what you're doing? And I have to say, I think that is incredibly important. So basically, gone are the days of me writing a book, publishing it, putting it in my shelf so that nobody reads it, nobody sees it. Impact is about, does it have an effect on people? And also, can we measure it? So if you like, you can go and have a look at this particular website, and it will show you all the details of the impact in the UK since the year 2021. Very exciting document. This is what an impact case study actually looks like. And this is one of mine from the last impact case study, which I did in collaboration with a sculptor by the name of Simeon Nelson. And we spend an awful lot of time working with our research office, honing this particular document so that it basically tells a story. The idea of telling a story to the assessors is becoming increasingly important. Now, Sam alluded also to the fact that her students, when they have an idea, they have a thinks bubble. This is my thinks bubble. When I was having my thinks bubble, you'll see that there was nothing in it. That's quite common for me when I start a new project. But round about the same time, I also started to have a conversation with an arts therapist who knocked on my door one day in the university and said, you might want to meet this cardiologist called Gianpaolo Martinelli. Because Gianpaolo is extremely interested in the idea of collaborating with different forms of artists, sound artists, visual artists, concerning basically what's going on inside Bart's Hospital. So I was initially asked to go in and record sounds of the ICU because Gianpaolo was very aware that we spend quite a lot of time, or the staff in ICU spend quite a lot of time being bombarded by this cacophony of sound. That's the only way I can really describe it. But they actually spend no time listening to any of these sounds whatsoever. In fact, they try to block it out in the same way that we might try to block out if you're at a party and you have these types of conversations where there are multiple people talking all the time and you're trying to concentrate on one particular sound. So all these important beeps and blips that you might think are incredibly important, they try not to listen to. So one of the things that I became aware of was that, as Sam has also alluded to, I'm very interested in the idea of the reality of the world that we live in. So particularly in the UK, we are bombarded by commercial TV which shows edited highlights, basically, if that's a fairly crass way of putting it, of medical procedures. We have lots and lots of those particular programs. But I've always been interested in the bits that hit the editing floor, the real material, the really boring bits, if you like, the bits where all the excitement is finished and you're just left with one nurse potentially tidying up afterwards and singing to herself, which is something which has happened quite a lot. So this idea of the real reality, the normality, has become very important in my type of work. So I was invited to attend various different cardiac procedures in Bart's Hospital to make recordings. I was extremely apprehensive about this to start with. You might be delighted to know that all my recordings were done with a drop rig, which basically means I put a microphone inside the place, I press record, and then I leave. I quite like that idea. I've got a little bit braver as I've gone on, but not that brave. So this particular procedure, the last one that I've actually recorded, is called a, God, you know, I've forgotten the name, but yeah, it's called a ventricular tachycardia ablation. Now, what that actually means is that this particular patient is having an irregular heartbeat repaired. And I became very aware, whilst talking to Gianpaolo, that this idea of pulse, this idea of rhythm, on the micro and the macro scale is something which is really important to me as a musician. I have to say, if I have to subdivide music into all the different terms, so from rhythm, harmony, etc., rhythm is very important to me. So the idea of listening to a rhythm being corrected in this particular procedure is something which I was very interested in. Now, the initial showings of this particular work were done on headphones. So this particular example is a recording in its entirety. It lasts for around about 12 hours. And in the installation that we've created for this particular project, what we do is start the installation at the time of the procedure started, and it ends exactly at the time that time that it ended. So it's completely unedited, completely unchanged. Headphones, quite special things for musicians, the wonderful thing about headphones is that it allows us to isolate that sound. So we can listen to that sound if we want. You'll be aware that with sound, it's not possible to close your eyes to sound. If a sound's in this room, it's in this room. But with headphones, you kind of can do that. Now, when we are listening purely to sound, played through loudspeakers, we are listening in a way which is called acousmatically. So acousmatic sound is, in simple terms, a sound that we hear without seeing the originating cause. So I have a question for you.
That didn't work.
Can you put the sound through the loudspeakers? What is that? It's a cat, somebody said. You know what? It's just as likely to be a cat as a dog because you're all wrong. It's not a cat. It's not a dog. We can keep going through all these different animals. It's not any of those things because, of course, what it is an audio recording of something which sounds like a dog. Now, that's a little bit tenuous, but the fact is about to do with the meaning of the sound. Because if that originating cause was here and that particular dog was there, you would all be behaving very, very differently to how you're behaving at the moment. Because I play a recording of the sound of a dog and you don't care too much really. But if that dog was here, behaving in that particular fashion, it's likely that you would all be out that door. So the meaning of that sound becomes very, very different when we listen in an acousmatic way. And one of the purposes behind the project that I'm doing at Barts is to help people to understand what the real sound of a theatre is like. Now, even I'm getting scared by the dog now, I tell you. That was a real dog. So the latest things that we've been doing, as well as playing back through on headphones, I've also been doing ambisonic recordings. So an ambisonic recording is fundamentally an immersive audio experience. So it means that I can then play that back from basically 4 microphones in 1 through to 7.1, 7.14, all sorts of different things. So it means that we get immersive sound around us and also above us. So this was the project that I just ran at the university very, very recently. It's the first time that I ran this with an ambisonic rig. And it looked very much like this. So we invited people to come into this particular space and listen to the sounds of the theatre in an immersive environment. There's a big difference between doing this on headphones and doing this in this particular environment, because obviously you are not in control of the listening experience when you walk into this space. You cannot simply take off the headphones, and there's a big difference behind that. So I really should play some.
Yeah. Some music. Around that fancy agree with that again. All beating things. It's just a bit of option, okay? While I do that, we're going to give you the very bizarre NES archery measure of some 2 dots on your forehead. Okay? I think the classical music is making us feel more like this part. The very odd one, the very odd one.
So the sound that you were hearing then is the patient being given anaesthetic. You might have noticed that there's a bit of music going on in the background. It's very, very common for the anaesthetist that I'm working with to play music for the person when they go to sleep. We're very, very interested in the idea of the effect of sound to the staff in a theatre and also to the patient. Juan Paulo is fairly convinced that patients which leave the theatre and then enter ICT are coming out with some type of stress disorder. And we're fairly convinced also that that stress disorder is largely as a result of the sound that they are being subjected to. So it's quite possible that we may well be looking at things about how we can go about improving that, particularly for the staff. One thing's for sure, we all know that sound can be a type of pollution. And the type of pollution that we're talking about, of course, is noise pollution. And pollution of any type, of course, can be very damaging. So we've also been looking at these sounds visually. So this is a spectrogram of the 4 channels of the ambisonic recording. They're quite revealing. You can see moments of activity and moments of inactivity. And looking at these over the 12 hours is quite a demanding thing to do. But one of the things that we are trying to do is to find meaning from also the visual sources. Now, I'm also very interested in all of these, all the types of things that we sort of think that we should avoid. So bugs, errors, glitches, failure, miscalculation, etc., etc. I've done quite a lot of work in my music which replicates these. Bizarrely, one thing that the last cardiac operation taught me was, of course, that inaccuracy is really, really important. It needs to be slightly inaccurate, but it doesn't want to be too inaccurate, because if it is, that gives people all sorts of problems. So I've already done a number of projects. This is a project of mine from around about 10 years ago that looked at this form of error. Anarchy in the Organism was a project that I did with Simeon Nelson, and what this particular project does, it examined how cancer cells developed, and we created algorithms that modeled those, and we did those in relationship with a biomedical scientist. So very likely that I'll be showing my pieces in gallery situations like this. This is an art centre on the outskirts of Cambridge where I'm currently collaborating with. For me as a musician, I show my material, say, in concert halls, in public art situations all over the place. But I have to say this is my background. So actually working in a concert hall situation is very, very important to me. Finally, the Art Scilab, which is headed by Sam. I'm one of the founding agencies, and we are looking to grow those a great deal more. That's me. Please do look at the Art Scilab research page. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you very much, Rob. I hope you have enjoyed this distinguished panel. I think it's interesting in the sense that we started with Gunnar talking about, in a sense, the framework of thinking about artistic research and some of the philosophical conceptual challenges, and then when Danny, in a sense, gave us a rundown of the history of how the PhD and artistic research and challenges faced by institution and the differences between in different countries in that sense. And great to have Sam and Rob, in a sense, giving us a very specific case study and sample, to look at them. So I've been asked that not to talk too much, so that we can open that for any question from the floor, right? So let's begin. Yes, there's a question from Ruth. Yes. Yeah, please introduce yourself, and then also the question for any of the panel or everyone.
Hello, my name's Dr. Ruth D'Souza. I'm from Melbourne, Australia, and thank you for a beautiful, warm welcome. Oh, I'm getting photographed. I have a question for Sam and Rob, which is, and thank you, great panel, really interesting issues and lots to dive into for us. One of the questions that I have is round about, Sam and Rob, how do you negotiate when different kinds of impact are valued by different disciplines, and how do you negotiate so that you both get your kind of professional development goals met, or you know what I'm trying to say, hey? But you know, if you were working in an interdisciplinary way, and different kinds of outputs are valued, how do you make sure that both parties, you know, say you're collaborating with scientists or health professionals, how you're both getting what you need, in addition to the joy of the collaboration, in terms of the outcomes and outputs?
You have one as well. The politics of collaboration.
Did you want to answer that, or shall I?
Yeah, we're sorry, is my mic on? We're both looking at each other, sort of hoping that the other's going to go first here. I'm a musician, as mentioned, and for the last ref, I was entered into the art and design area. And that for me was a challenge, actually, on many levels. But one of the things that is very, popular is the wrong word, but increasingly important is interdisciplinarity. And I certainly work in that particular way, and I always have done, and not just because of the ref, it's because that's what I do, and that's what I've always enjoyed doing. It's a difficult question, though, because there is a separate music ref. But I would also say that research isn't just about the ref, despite what I've really been saying. Research is about doing things that we do with a passion, and that's why I do it. And if it happens to fit into the ref, I'm glad the Dean isn't here, our Dean. If it happens to fit into the ref, that's great.
It is being filmed, though.
It is.
Live.
Yeah, I didn't say any of that.
Yeah, I'd also say that, like, so for instance, we have a project at the moment that Rob and I are working on together with psychology around Tourette syndrome. And what will happen with that probably is that we'll have certain outcomes from that maybe, we don't know what it is yet because it's research, but it will probably, obviously it'll be some kind of audiovisual aspect. That will go in for our unit of assessment. And then the psychology collaborator and her PhD will go into the assessment for psychology in health and medical sciences. So that's how it can work. In terms of how do we get our... Do you mean sort of like how do we sort of... how does it form part of our career development? Or what was the second part of the question? Sorry, I didn't quite understand it.
Well, I'm just curious because, you know, when we're having our portfolios evaluated, we're having to choose particular codes, like you were talking about, you know, the music one. But then, you know, if we're trying to strategically make our way up through the, you know, the professional development, you know, just how we do that, aside from the joy, because, you know, nowadays, I'm not sure about the UK, but so many academics are precariously employed. So if that's the case, you know, how on earth, you know, can you do that aside from the joy? Sorry to be cynical, but also pragmatic, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know particularly. I don't think I'm massively strategic about that. I think I've always just done what interests me as a practitioner. I do really love collaborating, and one thing that we're tasked quite a lot with is income generation, which is another thing that sends shivers down our spine. And, you know, and so if you get income through an external grant, so we have the Arts and Humanities Research Council, that are a really big funding body. It funds your time basically, but then then also that, so if to become the system's different in the UK. You're not automatically a professor in the UK. You have to go through a you know, trial by fire, and crawling over glass and climbing greasy poles and all that. But part of see, now this is going to just wave to the Dean. Part of how you're assessed would be on income generation, and completions, PhD completions would be the main two, really, right? And probably having contribution to rest, but that wouldn't be the deal breaker. It would be income generation and completion of students.
Yeah, and there is a requirement for readers and professors to output a certain number of outputs, and also to earn a certain amount of money. But it's a fairly blunt tool, and I mean, the funny thing, well, it's not funny, but the thing for us in the arts is, of course, that we can frequently make a lot of work for very little, whereas somebody involved in the sciences, it's the opposite. And so income generation for us is difficult, like it is for all artists, whether you work in a university or not.
Maybe one thing just to say with the, I think Sam, you mentioned the kind of the challenges about being seen as the artistic partner, that you're illustrating some kind of scientific kind of process, right? And I think it is a danger, but I think there's a lot of enthusiasm in other disciplines that are not creative disciplines for collaboration, particularly around the engagement with the public element. Not always in an instrumental way, but they just recognize that artists are just working in public all the time. We don't have to do research translation. Our work happens a lot of the time out actually in kind of communities of practice. And so I feel that, to me, like working in somewhere like the University of Melbourne, there's just always, there's a lot more enthusiasm than I had thought there would be from people in other disciplines to actually have people from our faculty involved in research projects. And a lot of the time it's around this question of how we connect to community and construct community, create community. And I think that's something that artists and creative practitioners have always been very, very, very good at. And it's difficult to find the language to share it, but I do think there's a, thinking about your president's remarks earlier about hoping that this faculty can do more collaboration with other areas. I feel like there's a lot of untapped potential for us in our work with the rest of the university in Melbourne.
Any words?
Several things. I think impact is an interesting framing for the kind of effect that we have on the effect that our work has. Sometimes I find that, especially the language in which it is framed, impact is something that you anticipate, right? You say, well, I'm applying for a grant. I'm saying this is what I think the impact would be. Maybe you'll get that impact, and maybe you won't. And if you don't, then you confess and you say, well, you did not get it. The challenge for me is to acknowledge that for all of us in whatever we're doing, to not put the cart before the horse, to actually say, look, why are we doing this? We are doing this because we really care about this. Why are we sharing this? We are sharing this because we think someone out there might be interested in what we are doing. The impact is something that will result from some of the things you are doing. You can, to some extent, especially in some kinds of projects, you can anticipate what the impact would be. But very often, it's not something you can predetermine or predict. So the question then is, so the two parts, right? One is, how do we still manage to get funding and support, institutional as well as financial, from institutions to do the work we want to do? And very often the language of impact is what is dangled in front of us. We said, look, what is the impact of what are you doing? And I do think that while we have inherited this and we don't have capacity to change it, we should be always mindful of why we are doing these things. I think especially it's very different for people in the universities as opposed to an artist who is independently practicing. An artist who's practicing independently will make the work they want to make, and they will show the work, and the impact would be whatever they get out of it. Especially in universities, we actually have to frame what we are doing in terms that can be accounted for. And it's understandable, but we should not lose sight, I think, of the fact that why we are still in the arts. And our obligation, if at all, is to ourselves, to the integrity of what we do, and the integrity of that relationship that we are having with our audience, with our viewers, with the public that we are engaging. So I do think that's one point I would like to make. It's just making sure that we are not losing sight of why we do what we do. Then the other thing is there is a tendency, especially, and I've spent a lot of time trying to create collaborative relationships between artists and different disciplines, the sciences, technologists, people in legal sector, in community work, in social work, and one of the things I have realized is while this expands our work beyond our own narrow, like if we make an artwork and we show it in an exhibition, well, or we make an animation and it's shown in it's screened, it gets a particular narrow audience. But when we collaborate with, let's say, people in the health sector, on social work or whatever, we are able to expand that impact very differently. But we still need to be mindful of what that does to our work. So does our work change fundamentally as a result of this? And is it a change that we want as artists, we want as people in the arts? Or is it just simply what they call grantsmanship, right? You are trying to get resources for what you're doing, and so you collaborate with someone else who has a better chance of getting the funding. And it happens. That kind of opportunism happens. But I do think that collaborations are very, very important. I think especially today, and artists have always sought this. But there is a slight danger of, our objectives and what we care about sometimes being co-opted by those larger imperatives. And I think Ruth's point is, how do you speak to people who have different expectations of impact? So you might have collaborated, like Rob, you might have collaborated on this project, and some of your musician friends will look at you and say, hey, I'm okay. What are you doing, Rob? Are you really serious? This doesn't seem like serious music all the time. And the scientists who collaborate with you are going to be asked, oh, what you're doing is interesting. It's a sideshow. Where is your publication? Like Scopus. So I do think that we will continue to be pulled in different ways by different contingencies that we are accounting for. But I think there is much to be said about the value and the impact of what we do without reference to any of these things. Our art must be valuable whether we collaborate with sciences or not. Our art must be valuable whether we can predict what the impact will be or not. Because what we do is important in forming culture. And so that kind of cloud of instrumentalization that sometimes happens in our work in universities, our work in cultural institutions where we are relying on funding, and all the historically artists, did not have to ask for grants. There were situations of different ways of patronizing them. This is the systems of patronage where you're just being supported by someone who says, hey, I'm interested in seeing this. The king might do this, or the Sultan might do this, or whatever, right? but that has changed significantly, and our relationship to the public has therefore changed also. What I'm asking for us to be aware about is it should not change the way we do work. It should still come from a genuine place where we care about what we are doing.
Dr. Rupesh, any question from you? You have okay, yes, Megan. Okay, Megan.
Hi, panelists. My name is Megan Wanawijoy. I'm from Faculty of Cinematic Arts. So thank you for your sharing. I have 2 questions. Of course, we know artistic research and art practice is important, but many universities, they value like university ranking, which of course is tied to scopus publications. All publications and also research funding is also catered that way. And that trickles down to the faculty where their KPIs have to support the ranking. So knowing the difference, of course, artistic research to these, how can these expectations be reframed that artistic practice that is not scopus can contribute to university ranking? That's the first question. The second one is, of course, we know artistic research is more closely related to publications, but of course artistic research has a role also in practice, like film festivals or exhibitions and such. But what do you see the difference between artistic research and, of course, the more industry kind of making artworks? The emphasis and objectives are essentially different. And what would you say would be how they can play a bigger role, or they can have more connections between artistic research and the industry? Thank you.
I think it's the question sort of practice-led and practice-based as well, in that sense. Yeah.
Going to try and break that down a little bit. I mean, we in the UK, we can put in practice-led research for our ref. So maybe I'm not best placed to answer that because we already have a model for that. So for the last ref, I put forward 2 bodies of film work, and then there was all the activity around that with things like exhibitions and all of the stuff that you do as part of an exhibition. And so I suppose the challenge for maybe the Malaysian context is to look at what is happening in other countries. I don't just want to hold the UK up as as a great example, but I think in terms of your question, how the UK, it's not perfect by any means, but I think the fact that we can put forward practice-led research and that is understood as acceptable as a publication equivalent, I think is a good model that could be looked at. I think, I suppose in terms of, the difference between, were you asking the difference between, say, sort of contemporary art practice outputs and design? Was that what you were asking? What was the difference between those? I mean, design is not my area, but wherever you have a discipline, you have the potential to create new knowledge, and that new knowledge could be within that discipline itself. So it could be new forms of design, for instance, or because I think quite often people think of research as being, something almost. I think we have a crisis of confidence in the sort of creative practices where we think we have to solve a problem that's not really in our remit, right? This is quite. We have to always stick within our discipline. What are we doing within our discipline? And it might be that we're collaborating and we're contributing to other disciplines, but it's also completely acceptable to be knowledge forming about your own discipline within your own discipline. So I know that there are different. I mean, you mentioned objectives. Well, you would have objectives in arts. Contemporary arts practice-led research as you would in design. So I'm not entirely sure that there's a huge amount of difference actually, but it's just discipline specific. Don't know if that's helpful, or if you wanted to ask a follow-up, or somebody else might be able to add a bit more to that. Danny's nodding. Are you? Yeah, he's going to have a go.
I think I think the Australian example is a good indicator of how governments are getting out of the rankings game.
No, I think it's because of the speaker at the back.
Governments are getting out of the rankings game because it's actually occupied by QS and private entities. And if you look at North America, it's like the government doesn't sort of necessarily get involved in this kind of evaluation. It's much more the British descended systems that have done that because they distribute more funding. So I think we're headed towards more that kind of model where we are going to be at the mercy of those kinds of systems. But those systems are also changing. So QS this year has brought in a sustainability indicator, for example, around its ranking of institutions. A lot of artists are engaged in work which is addressing those kind of questions of sustainability. A lot of designers in particular are engaged in work around refashioning the university's practices to be greener, be more engaged. So I think there's, the sort of the Scopus element, as I understand it, is not only a small part of those kind of private rankings, it's also perhaps a diminishing or changing part at least. And so that's a very dynamic kind of situation. And I think my experience is that it's often, there's a generational distinction in how that's understood. People who grew up with those kind of bibliometric measures just kind of assume that that's the basis of what these rankings are. But if you actually see how the rankings are calculated, there's many more other things going on. Student ratios, diversity, equity and inclusion, sustainability, all these things that are very new things for universities are part of what I think we can be involved in as well. One thing I would just say in design research that's a challenge is that universities have traditionally understood themselves as the source of knowledge and information and distributed it out into the world. I think in creative research we understand more that a lot of the knowledge in our disciplines doesn't start inside the university. It's actually out there already, and we go out to it and meet it and have some kind of interesting collaboration where we bring our knowledge of our methods and methodology into a productive dialogue with, say, an industry partner or someone who's doing things, and that's not an easy kind of process for the university to support or to fund, because it's much more comfortable with a medical and science research model where the grant comes in, all the knowledge gets generated in, then it gets pushed out. But we know from these development of impact metrics and all of this kind of emphasis on engagement that's coming all through the sector, people recognize that that's not what universities do anymore, right? We're in a much more dynamic ecosystem of knowledge. All the knowledge is out there already. What we're trying to do is demonstrate ways to engage with it in new ways. I think and creative researchers do a lot of that.
Okay, we have 10 more minutes, so maybe Mr. Najib, do you still want to ask a question? And then also we'll pick up, one question as well.
Just for the benefit of everyone. Very good morning. Assalamualaikum. He's trying his best to make art to be stand up, towards in research. But why art have to be science? My question. It seems that everybody know art is totally different compared to mathematics. So it seems that everybody is trying to adapt or try to make art influence into science. So my question is, why don't we have, like previous long back then, 18th century, we have cubism, we have impression, we have our own cluster. Why we have to be in science? So mathematics is totally separated. Like somebody search about sound, it's all about art. But then again, you have to make as such, into something, into numbers, in figures. That's my question. Why can't we have our own world of arts? Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Najib's existential question. So, but Gunnar, you want to address that?
So, so, thank you very much. I've known Rupesh for 20 over years, and I definitely know that he does not want to make art into science. But what I think that people like Rupesh and a lot of people, on this stage and many others I know are agitating for is a change in the way art is understood in the context of universities. Art, for many of us who have been in universities for a while, we know that art was a late entry into the university system. The university system was not structured, right? Whatever model you look at, whether it's the 600-year-old model or the 300-year-old model or the 250-year-old models of university education out there, and most universities right now, including the ones here, including MMU, are structured around some combination of these models. And all these models were not built with the idea of how to teach art, right? Teaching art itself was happening outside of academia, was happening outside universities. But fortunately, I think for all the young people here, universities have become places for the teaching of art and all kinds of creative disciplines. So what we need to acknowledge then is if art is going to be taught in universities, and there are going to be faculty who are going to be supporting those students in their learning, how do we best support them? How do we best support them in their, you are systematically not able to participate on equal terms in a university setting where you are not, your work is not considered to be as important as a publication, right? So part of the challenge that you are facing is something that many universities in Australia and the UK and the US, they faced at one point where they were saying, hey, what we do is very important. Why is it not being acknowledged in our promotion? Why is it not acknowledged in our academic annual reviews? Why is it not acknowledged when our students are performing well, but they don't get the awards, the university level awards, because their output, their research output is not considered important. So the question is, how do we, all of us, whether if we are in a university setting as artists, as students and faculty, how do we find our rightful place within it? So a lot of what we have been discussing is about saying, hey, art engages in research. Artists engage in research. It might not look like research for many universities, but it happens nevertheless. There are different methodologies, different philosophies, different kinds of ways in which we do it, but it's all equally important as the sciences. So the question is not how to make art science, but how to make sure that artists and art professions and art professors can find their rightful place in a university setting, where they can get the resources they need, they can get the progression, career progression in the university structure. Because right now, especially in places like MMU and in many other places here in Malaysia, they are not really acknowledging the importance of artistic output, because you're still looking for publications. You're still looking for Scopus publications, right? And that debate has has already happened in many other places, right? What Danny was talking about is exactly this, and I think Sam and Rob talked about it also, that their research as artists is being acknowledged as important as any scientists in their universities. That needs to happen. And Megan, to your question, it can only happen if there are policy changes. So, you know, Danny has been involved in some of this work. I've been involved in it for many years in multiple countries. And I can tell you that unless policies change, unless educational structures change, unless institutional structures like departments and colleges and this is this faculty and this is this school, and then students can only take courses there, and maybe sometimes they can take courses there. None of these things are going to be working very much. And I'm ranting now because I've been in universities for 30 years and 30 over years, and I've been very reluctantly in universities because I've seen the problems of universities and why we are sometimes failing in our ability to prepare this next generation for the future. Because as a university, arts, as the things we do very valuably, is to bring it back in. We need to reclaim that. And that's what we are talking about. I think that's what people like Rupesh have been pushing for here, you know, like how do we reclaim our rightful place in a university where we are, right? And we can't change the fact that we are in a university. What we can change is our place within the university.
Rob? Yeah, Rob has.
Yeah. Possibly surprisingly, I agree with a lot of what you've just said. From our perspective, the Art Sci Lab isn't about attempting to convert art into science. Absolutely not. We're not about attempting to illustrate science. Absolutely not. We're attempting to create something new. It's worth bearing in mind, I think, for everybody here, that a piece of artwork, if I write a song, is not necessarily research. It could be, and it could be represented as research, if it is addressing a research question in some way, but it is not fundamentally research. But the thing I do disagree with you on, and I might be slightly misunderstanding, is that music, of course, is a science. Music has been a science for 2,000-3,000 years. In my university, all of our courses are BScs. So we have Bachelor of Science in Music, and we also have MScs, which are Masters. And it's not attempting, there's a very, I'm not quite sure how to put it, it can potentially come across as quite dry, simply describing music as maths or as science, but it is. And that combination is really, really interesting. Aesthetically, it's a really beautiful form of science, and for me, that's very important.
Maybe one more question? Yes, there's one more question, yeah. So we'll take a last question. Yeah.
It's an honor to take the last question.
Yes,
Thank you so much for the insightful conversations and from the audience and from the speakers. I'm Hu Jueling from University of Amsterdam. My question is another thread on ethics. So I'm curious about, like, when you collaborate with scientists, or especially in hospital scenes that involves a human subject, how's your experience so far passing or applying permissions from ethics committees, and what's your thought on ethics-related issues when collaborate with scientists and engineers? I think that's for you.
There's a very specific Rob question.
Yeah. So for any research that we do which involves other people, we need to get ethics approval from the university. That's quite a long, involved process, and it involves basically protecting anybody that's going to be involved in the research. So for this particular project, surprisingly for the university, the ethics approval didn't take a great deal of time to complete. Bart's Hospital already have these procedures in place, so we need permissions from absolutely everybody that's involved to do this. But there is another side to this, and that ethics approval is something which is really important to me, because I had the great privilege, and I do regard it as a privilege, of recording people at the most fragile time of their lives. And certainly some of the recordings that I did, and I'm continuing to do, the outcome was variable. And I was very, very aware of that. And there's a personal side to that ethics about how I feel about that relationship between me that's capturing that information and everybody else that's in that space. And I have to say that's something that I'm still coming to terms with. But that is really, I suppose, outside of the ethics approval. But we have to be very, very, very careful. Quite rightly.
And I think there's a question from a student.
Hi, thank you. My name is Mohammad Waziul Lopu. I'm from FCM. I'm doing PhD actually. So I like to thank you all for your great speech actually. So I'm just thinking about the relation that you were trying to combine science and arts. So my question is one, as an artist, we all know that, artists are not good at math or equations or something, like I am not good at math, but scientist is very good at math. So how these two people or these two, fields combine? And as an artist, what we should focus on? Because from my side, I'm an artist, I have to focus on building my portfolio, not in the papers or scopus or anything, like we're discussing. So, and my question is, what we should focus? Building more papers, publish more papers, or building my portfolio? Because as an artist, it's important. Thank you.
Okay, all right.
Hello. I would just like to say that it's not maybe true that artists aren't good at maths, or I mean, I actually know some artists who trained as physicists, for instance. So I think we also need to break that down, that there are these two different minds at work. I would also say that you might have or people might have an idea that they're generally not good at maths, for instance, in the traditional sense. But if you think about how artists work with composition, for instance, when we do drawing, how we understand space, it's very mathematical. So, this is something also that we're interpreting differently, and there are different modes. So I just want to say that. In terms of my opinion on what you should focus on is your portfolio. I mean, that's what you do. You're an artist. That's how you research through making, I would presume. But I don't want to get you in trouble with the institution. I don't know what they're asking of you, but it would seem to me a kind of quite simple answer to that is that if that's what you do.
Yeah, so it's a extra pressure for artist, as he needs to build the portfolio as well as the publishing. But the scientist or any other fields, no, he doesn't need to build the portfolio. It's that what you say.
Yeah, I don't have it. Sorry, I don't have a quick answer to that. I mean, it would seem that the portfolio would be the sort of priority, obviously, but there's a different system, so.
I'm not sure in this distinction either, because in the sciences, your portfolio is your publications count. But that does not, chasing a publication count doesn't result in good science. And chasing a portfolio of artistic work or exhibitions doesn't result in good art. We have many, 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 many case studies of those things, right? But what we have, as Gunnar was saying in his opening remarks, in artistic research is a space of inquiry, of looking into a real conceptual basis of how you experiment with something. And that is something that's shared between the arts and the sciences. The processes by which you do it are very different. But in my experience, thinking about art-science collaboration, I'd be interested to know if Sam and Rob agree with this, but if you start talking about, from an artistic point of view, if you start talking about your methods and your materials and the kinds of things you're trying to find out, actually that puts you on a very similar plane with someone doing scientific inquiry. And you can have a very open kind of dialogue that goes back and forth, and it's not really a hierarchy at all. It's not about mixing them together into a smoothie. It's about a meeting point, right, where you can understand the differences in your own trajectory and that of another practitioner who comes from a very different background, and everyone brings something to the table. So I would just say, you know, if you're a practicing artist, you have, and doing a PhD, you already know that there's certain ways that you work that are different than all of the people sitting next to you, yeah? And whatever those differences are, those are the things that are important for you to develop, and your own kind of conceptual understanding of your own practice and what's really at the base of it, and what your unique kind of set of things are that you're really interested in. That's what you should focus on. And if it results in a lot of work or not very much work, or if it results in writing about those things, if I'm not making enough work for my portfolio, I'm not going to succeed, because it puts and how you do that, every artist does that in a different way, I think.
All right, thank you very much. I've been giving the sign that we are running on rubber time. So thank you very much, Danny and Sam, Rob and Guna. I think if I may sort of sum up, I think it's also we are dealing with a different speed of development, right? Either from Australia, UK, to Singapore, America, and to Southeast Asia as well. Yeah, and interestingly, thank you for bringing out all this, both epistemological issues, social, historical issue, and I like what, when you talk about Bharat, I think we have to acknowledge the ontological, epistemological ethics that we are working with in this aspect, and how we can bring the arts and science together again, right, in that respect. So back to you, Susie, and rounds of applause to our panels.
Thank you very much for that wonderful double mics.
No,
How come I got two mics?
No spinning wheels. No
spinning wheels. We will have another spinning wheel. All right. Okay, thank you. All right, so I've been also informed there's no more lucky draw, so we'll skip that. So I'm very sure that our hunger is upon us. Ladies and gentlemen, we appreciate you taking the time out from your busy schedules to join us today. We hope you enjoy the activities lined up for you. We invite our guest of honor, staff and students, to join us for a luncheon at the atrium. So please proceed after the atrium. Thank you, everyone, for a wonderful session at the 3rd FCM Postgraduate Reignite and APARN Symposium 2024. I hope you had a great time experiencing the innovative research and creative discussions. So signing out, I'm Susie Sulaiman, and see you next time at more exciting events. Sorry, I have to do a little bit of a public service announcement here. So we have 2 events coming up: the Postgraduate Open Colloquium at the FCM meeting room today at 1 p.m. And of course, continuing with the APARN Symposium tomorrow, 13 June, at also the FCM meeting room, and and it's also online, broadcasted live. Hold up, I have to get it, yeah. So if you can't join us physically, it's also broadcasted live on the APARN Asia Pacific Artistic Research Network at APARN 202. So you can also join us online if you can't come here physically. So thank you very much, and let's have lunch. Okay.